in Italy, all those amazing places, those people, the school that we talked in, and Liz just kind of showing to these incredible, beautiful 14, 15-year-old Italian school children that Luigi had organised for us to visit, you know, demonstrating why she was such an amazing politician for so many years, kind of in a nutshell. I can see my beautiful Nuala, my beautiful Afrik there, Federica, thank you Francesca, being a bit gushy, but this is just, it's like this is the culmination of a year and a half's kind of experience. Thank you to Valerie, of course, to Catherine and Federica and for setting this up in the first place, for Liz for all her sterling work, to Dan and to Shauna, Marielle and Hannah from New Ireland who've done just an amazingly beautiful job here. Sean, Bill, Noel, Liz, Nuala, Afrik. I just feel really privileged to have been the name pulled out of the hat to read tonight. It could have been any of us, and these are amazing writers. The Italian writers are fantastic as well. The translation, Cormac's translations are just wonderful. It's a really beautiful book, and I urge you to purchase a copy. I'm going to read it. It's about the same length. I chose the last 5 pages of my piece, so it's the same length as Francesca's. It's set in Dublin in 1976, and it's told from the viewpoint of a woman called Lotte Evans. And it starts with a bit of sex, it ends with a bit of shouting and arguing, so I decided to do the arguing bit. Next time the other. Okay, so so it's Lotte, it's when I talk about she, that's Lotte. She felt alright on the journey, giggly, a little schoolgirlish. And it had seemed odd, but not wrong, to hold hands and lean against him on the front seat, swaying as the bus rounded corners, allowing gravity to push them together and to pull them apart. She'd caught sight of their reflection in the bus window and even thought, my God, how innocent. But once when they got to the pub, a dingy basement full of smoke and the smell of Guinness, where a band in woollen jumpers were setting up in a corner, it all changed. She began to feel hemmed in, more so when she realised he was meeting friends. All male, all young, bearded like relics from an older, more idealistic time. She didn't want his friends in her life, especially not these with their Gaelic names and their laughter when she failed to pronounce them correctly. She felt like leaving, returning to Bagot Street and Caliban to home. That surprised her. But then the poet handed her a pint of Guinness and a whiskey chaser. I'd got you a sherry if you weren't such a women's liver. And although it's a bizarre thing for him to say, an awful joke of even that, she could feel the awkwardness behind it, the need to please. So she decided, against her wiser instincts, to stay. What's it like now, hoping for the enemy? Owen asked one of the friends. A Dubliner with close-set eyes and a bushy moustache. The poet glanced at her. Jesus Christie, just working, she thought. Odd that. Not enemy, but working. Leave him be, Christie, said another man, dark, self-contained, with a Northern Irish accent. What do you think of that? The moustached one, Christie, was staring at Lotte. Sorry? Owen. Taking pictures for the Brits? Confused, she looked at the poet. It's not the Brits, said the poet. It's the organ of the liberal bourgeoisie. Christie's words were enunciated too clearly, like an English person speaking school French. He laughed. Irish Times. Irish? That's a right fucking joke. The Irish Times? She thought. The newspaper. That sticky top there, Christie, said the dark man. Christie ignored him, kept staring at Lotte. I'm just asking Owen, what happened to his principles? Chucky our law, all that. Evans is Welsh, said the poet. Oh, aye, said the dark one. Still a left footer, said Christie. Still a subject of the bleeding crown. Philip. The Irish for bard. The Gaelic bards, he told her once when they were fucking, had 2 roles. To flatter the power and had, if crossed, to satirise it, since when had he been working for a newspaper? Actually, she heard herself say, I'm not Welsh. The poet's head jerked towards her. I'm from Bristol. What's that word, poet? A Sussemock, Christie snorted into his pint. Interesting city, Bristol, hometown of Strongbow, I believe. She lifted her glass. Without whom my Saxon forebears would never have invaded this lovely little island of yours, Slaughter. A collective intake of breath. Funny, nobody corrected her, said, you know, it was the Normans, Lottie, not the Saxons. Jesus Evans, said the poet, just how long had he been working there? Oh, don't get your knickers into a twist, poet, she said, exaggerating the little stops she picked up in London. I'm not a proper English, no more than Christie here knows the least fucking thing about revolution. Something brutish coiled in Christie's shoulders. Ah, she thought, it's coming. And that dead part of her wouldn't have been disappointed if he'd hit her. But instead the dark man laughed, revealing strong white teeth. Lotte, he said. Deutsch oder? Christie looked puzzled. Rote Arme Fraktion, said the northerner. Fraktion, du idiot, she almost said, but the poet interrupted. Jesus, quiet, Willies. The music is starting. She could see the anger flickering in his face, and underneath that something raw and uncertain. But that was a fucking liberty, because if anyone deserved to be angry, it was her. And then the music began, and people hushed, and even Christie lost interest in her and began enthusiastically thumping the back of the man beside him. And she drank the Guinness and the next chaser that the poet gave her, avoiding his eyes and the eyes of the dark man, and the next pint and chaser after that, and gathered without really listening that the poet's friends, apart from the northerner, were boys he'd met in the wild, dead years after he'd left school. 3 times he failed to get into art college, too thick to get the message, too bloody-minded, too full of notions of his own bloody genius, kept pestering the newspapers though, and now an uncle who was a subby had pulled some strings, and she had only herself to blame. She'd seen the books in his flat. What had she thought she was playing at to put her head in the lion's den like that? And they all drank another round, and somebody said how hot the weather would be in Belfast, eh? And they laughed and slapped the poet on his back and told him, Nyon, you show the Brits, you show the fat cats, you show the mohair suits in Kildare Street. Show it as it is, oh, show everyone on this Paxi Island what's going on. Those orange pricks with their property and their profits and their proletariat fooling lodges, and no Catholics need apply. Those be special bollocks, those trigger-happy para-bastards, those warmongering imperial fuckers in Whitehall, them murdering cunts. You showed them what the murders of 1916 died for, what the people on the streets of Derry will come down for. You know what it is, shouted the northern man, anointing the poet's brow with whiskey. For you are Owen Boschta, John the Baptist, Owen the Marxist, shouted Christie. Blessed Owen, yelled another. And she thought of the music he played when they were fucking. The soundtrack to their own rocking and rolling, his blues, and Chuck Berry and Bowie and Velvet Underground, and the weirder, brasher sounds with screeching guitars and voices yowling, in the UK, that belonged to some new thing called punk, happening in New York and London. And she wondered, what on earth that had to do with this? These fiddles and drums, these beards and oily jumpers, and what Belfast had to do with him, or anything, especially her. Grazie.